It took me forever to start learning how to sharpen, and some of the slowness was I kept trying to do a method that just I don't think would work for me for a very long time. But there's more than one method. What a lot of people show is you take a stone. Let me grab a stone here. And a knife, and you lock your arms and you keep it a precise angle, precisely 22.189 degrees, and I don't know about you, but I am not that patient, and I cannot, for the love of, for all that is holy, keep a precise angle. I'm like this once and this once, and I'm like, oh crap, and this knife will never get sharp. And right now, this is a very dull knife. Like I can probably, not gonna try, but you cannot shave with this. Does not compute. Barrier number one is the method itself is great for putting a very sharp V-edge on there, but there's more to life than the V-edge. There's other types of grinds. Learning that was huge in helping me sharpen my own knives and not just having to send them in or have that one buddy that might be okay. Just and the other thing is different edges have different benefits to them. Like this looks like it's hollow grind with a secondary V-edge on there. That's fine for most people. But just read up on the types of grinds on the secondary edges here and see what the benefits are to each. And a lot of companies put that V-edge on there because they just have to do one swipe on a belt grinder and do it to the other side, and then they box it up. And there's very little handwork done. So that's that. So barrier number one is the method, and barrier number two is they always have these big stones that are usually pretty expensive, and you feel like, okay, here's a barrier to entry that I don't want to pay for, and multiple stones. So a lot of people will just keep sending in their hardware, sending in their knives to Spyderco, which is a great company, or here's a Gerber knife, that they're just sending them in, paying money, getting it sharpened by a third party, and you can save a lot of money and do it yourself and actually have the skill to maintain your knives and not be afraid to use it. So let's break that barrier to entry. So I was recommended this Fällkniven stone, and a lot of people recommend the DC4. This is not that. This is almost identical. What the DC4 is a diamond coated side, which this is a diamond coat. A diamond side, one of these sides, I'm assuming it's the diamond side is this side, and then a medium grit side here that is ceramic. What this one is it's the CC4. I don't know if that's showing up. This is the CC4. What this is instead of DC, which is diamond ceramic, this is ceramic, medium fine. And then when I bought this was about 25 bucks US dollar. I didn't even know this, but on the back is rough leather that you can put compound on and turn this into a strop. And I'm getting mirror edges on just this setup. Like, it's not the best setup, but if I just had this, I could keep my knives in very good condition. And when I have friends that are like, hey, can you sharpen my knives? I'll be like, yeah, I'll come over, and I just bring this. Sometimes I might bring a bigger strop that has different compound on it, but and another thing is this comes in this. The stone comes in here and it fits in there, and it's just kind of hard to get out. So if you're camping, you just put it in here, put it in your bag, and you're good, and it goes all the way in there. So another barrier to entry is you get the stone, and there's zero videos on how to do it, or they're like, well, it's going to be, you're going to love this stone, but you need to buy this 2x4 and all these nails. And so there's not a lot of how to use a small stone like this, number one, and then there's even less about how to actually put a different edge on there other than the V edge. So what I like is called a convex edge, and this is probably not the best example, but it's the only knife I have near. This is a convex. Let me see how that shows up. We're done. There we go. So it rounds to the edge. There's no harsh edge there. There's no harsh like line there of sharp and just the side. It just all rounds into the edge. And there's benefits to either or. I really like a convex edge for durability's sake. If you're going to be kind of beating it around, I feel like it lasts a little longer, at least in my practice. So this is a convex edge, and this is not, but I want it to be. But I wanted to actually show how to do that, how to reprofile an entire knife. And this is not a small knife. I don't have a ruler, but this is not a small knife, okay? How to reconvex this entirely on this CC4 here. And then strop it on here and get it mirror-like, getting it as mirrored as I can get it. So it might kind of be hard for me to, I might have to resituate myself here. This stone, a lot of people will hold it like this and try, but then if your knife has a big handle, you'll never get the full blade on there. And like I said before, there's a lot of contraptions that people can make, but I like to just hold this because if you're not going to bring a 2x4 if you're going camping and you like chip your knife. So I want to show a little bit of that. So what I like to do is just hold it like this. See that? 2 on the bottom, 1 on the top like this. That's it. You hold your blade like this. You try to hold it flat. You can be sitting. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to tilt it up so you can see what it would look like. You kind of place it like this. Okay? And then when you grind it back and you lift up just a little bit. Okay, let me see, make sure I'm in shot here. So it'd be like this. So you gotta lift there. And then you let your body, the closer it gets to you, your hand's going to start lifting. And the farther it goes away, the blade inherently flattens, just because you would have to keep your elbow up to have it maintain that angle. So you're using your own body to maintain that edge rather than trying to use mathematics and Pythagorean theorem. So the closer you get, like your elbow bends up, and you see that? The farther I go away, the more my arm is straight, the flatter the blade is. When I lift it up, my elbow bends, and that my elbow is kind of bending out like that. That inherently, like the same degree every time if I'm not moving anything. So what you're going to do is, you're not just doing it one way. You're not just doing one way. You're just going to keep going back and forth like this. And then when you're starting to get to the edge, do not turn the blade in any way. The blade will stay straight. You always want that blade totally perpendicular to the stone here. What you're going to do is just lift. Just lift the butt of the knife like that. Okay? So you're here. So as soon as you get to the edge, you have to make sure that you don't just keep the blade straight there, but you keep rocking like you would the entire time. So the blade will stop if you have this here. This, I think that's called a choil. Just go from as far as you can on the actual blade, and keep doing this. Make sure you keep your elbow and really use the mechanics of your body to have it rotate. And keep doing that all the way until you're on the edge. And what we're going to do for reprofiling is just wait until we see that there's no harsh angle here, but it starts to get rounded off. So I'm just going to keep going here for a while. And don't be afraid to put a little bit of pressure on there. And you see how I'm kind of like going over the blade over and over like that? That is so that I'm not just grinding down this and I start getting waves in my blade. The other thing with, I haven't perfected this yet, but if you look at this knife, there's a little bit of scratches up here. One benefit for me with a V-edge is that you kind of keep your blade pretty. But the better at convexing you get, the less you'll get of this. If you can see that there's a little bit of scratches up here, but it will not affect the knife, and you can always buff that out too. So let me keep going here. I'm using moderate pressure. Like, see how light that is? No, I'm actually trying to sharpen my knife here. And on this knife, you can see right here that this is not totally flat. The blade itself lifts up just a hair right here. Hard to even show. But that makes it so you'll have a spot here where you can start to see that it's starting to convex right here. But then look at that. See this dark spot right here? That's reflecting differently because that's not rounded at all. Whereas this part is right here. Not rounded at all right here. So one thing I actually like about this, different than a huge stone, is you can kind of address each like inch and a half or whatever, or each inch by inch, rather than like on a big stone. How are you going to get that? How are you going to reach that spot? You're going to have to kind of be a little creative. Not impossible, obviously, and most people just grind that down. But on we go. Make sure you don't get too tense here. You might end up putting a V-edge on it because you're locked in. But remember, you're more accurate if you let the mechanics of your bone structure and muscles take control of the angle. Just try to get near flat on the end and then lift up just a little bit. The more you lift up, the rounder the blade will be. So if you lift up all the way, you're going to have a nice butter knife. So just try to figure out the motion and stop at the same spot back every time. And you can actually use your thumb here to actually be that barricade that says done, done, done. It might go without saying, but I'm going to say it. Don't round your finger. Like, make sure the only finger in the area in the way is this thumb. Okay? Sometimes you go 2 fingers. Whatever you're doing, make sure that see how my right here is in the line of cutting? You're sharpening this bad boy. Like, it might work at the beginning, but just find a place where the only thing that touches is the blunt part of the knife where you're not getting cut. Right there. And you might see me gripping it differently. It's just trying to reach around this camera and maintain that angle. It's very easy if you're just sitting. The other thing is, try to make sure that the stone itself isn't wobbling like this. You want to try to just lock the stone in place. It rocks sometimes, and you can actually use that rock to your advantage to help with the convex sometimes. But just when you're starting out, try to keep that bottom part locked in place. And you can see it's still moving around a little bit, but I still get razor sharp knives like this. And you're not relying on a table or a stump or anything. You're relying on having two hands. So convexed throughout here, a little more work is here, and I'm actually using the light. I'm not sure what's showing up on yours. I'm using the light to just make sure that the kind of, when you go like this, you can see that the light reflecting. You want the light to kind of reflect in a perfect line on that bevel, right in the middle of this edge. And I can see that there's some weird reflections here and here, which means it's probably some edge refining that needs to be done there. So I continue. The tip actually looked fine though, so I shouldn't have to focus there as much. Just more in this meaty middle area. And I would actually recommend learning how to both convex and edge and not, right now if you see me doing this with my thumb, I'm not checking for sharpness. I'm trying to make sure that I wipe any metal particles away. You can see my screen keeps turning off here. You can see that my finger's getting a little dirty, and that's just going to happen. You're going to have to wash your hands after this, but that's just metal particles. It looks like I need some more work here because there's still a little bit of that V edge there. And occasionally I'll feel like this to make sure, you know how people say to like have the wire go across? That's less important to me than most other people. And I don't know why. I feel like if I'm just waiting for a wire to develop, I'm just going to keep regrinding the same amount, and whereas this is more about refining, right? So maybe I'm wrong, but again, I still get some pretty sharp knives, and this already feels a little sharper even though everything's pushed to one side. So I focus more about making sure that you don't see any imperfections in this actual, and you can see how it reflects a little weird. There's still some refining, especially here. So I continue. And again, when I get near the tip, all I'm doing is keeping the rocking motion, and I'm lifting the butt of the knife up, just the handle up. And that helps you touch every inch of that edge. Could you be more precise if you had this stone not wobbling in your hand? Oh, heck yeah. But this is more about kind of getting good with your tool and not relying on any other tools. So you're not going to have to bring a table while you're camping. The other thing here is we're not looking for like this blade's going to look a little scratched up, right? And this edge is going to look a little scratched up. But we're just trying to profile it right now. We're not trying to make it look like a mirror just yet. So if you're still at this step and you're like, why does my, you know, it's never perfect no matter what I do here. Maybe try to just finish the sharpening with this side and stropping, and you might notice that, okay, well, as long as the profile's right, then I can move up to the next stone. One thing that I noticed myself doing a lot is I would not rock on the edge. Make sure you keep the rocking when you're on the tip here and the butt is up. You want to keep that rocking motion going. And as I get near the end of this stone, sometimes I will do less pressure on the actual blade. And some of that is just that I'm just kind of polishing up and getting it, doing the last little bits of imperfections out. Still a little more work there just because I'm reprofiling. That's going to be a little stinker. But you can see, hopefully in the video, that most of this blade is kind of convexed. You know, it's a secondary convex. It's going to be hard to actually convex this because this is a hollow ground. I hope that shows up. This is a hollow ground. So we're just doing a secondary convex here, which is just replacing that edge. So I continue. One thing that also appealed to me a lot more about the convex edging is that, or putting a convex on with the stone, is that it felt a little more forgiving of like, uh-oh, got to do more work there. Whereas if you're doing it the right way, or the V-edge way, if you're doing it the V-edge way, it feels like you can't work specifically on parts. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just not good at that part, but that was one thing that appealed to me, is if you're like, okay, this part needs work right here, you can focus on that one part. And I know some people can V-edge it like that, but not I. Almost there. You can see it's reflecting pretty standardly, maybe not perfectly just yet, but right here you can see there's a part that's not round, where that line in the middle of the edge kind of goes, it's a V-edge right there still because of the shape of the blade. And if you're maintaining an already convex edge, we would be done by now with the whole knife. It's just the reprofiling, and I thought it was important to just show that reprofiling is a major undertaking usually, but I wanted to make sure that people didn't feel like they had to spend a couple $100 minimum on precious water stones. I'm doing this in, you know, just no water, no oil, just stone in hand. The more you put this edge on, the better, the more you'll feel like the stone isn't fighting you as well. You feel like it's kind of less resistance on you, and that means that it's convexed and that you're following that convex. So when I feel a little more resistance here, I can tell that there's still a little V-edge under there, but when I'm here, it's a lot quieter, isn't it? Hopefully you can tell that. I can. Some of it here would be that it's actually grinding on this. If you notice, it's louder right there. So don't be like, oh my goodness, there's a huge error here or a huge imperfection here. The side of the stone might be grinding on like that. So just you'll feel when there's more resistance. Doesn't feel like there's much resistance there too. Want to do a little more. We're close. It probably would be just fine right now, but I don't want to have to fix that up later, you know, when it gets dull. If you are lazy, you can also, rather than use your whole arm, because this is small, sometimes you'll see me do this with my wrist, and it's just, sometimes if you do your wrist, you can just convex it very quickly rather than having to use that whole motion. So that's another tip too. If you get good with the full motion part, you might be able to pull off this wrist, because you quickly go from flat to your angle, especially if you're tired. It's hard to apply as much pressure, however, so I usually don't do that when you're really trying to reprofile, but you're just kind of polishing. So I'm going to call it there for that side. There's still a little tiny little bit right there where I don't feel like it's perfect, but you would just put a little more time into it. I'm feeling that when I actually strop it, that's going to go away, but I just want to say that maybe 5 more minutes and that would be totally gone. Nah, I want to do it right. Oops, gonna keep going. So this looks pretty good. Do you see that it all reflects? You can see right there, I think right there, there's a little bit of an not perfect grind. And right there where I've been working on, it's still like a little, like, you can see other light reflects. Some of that might also just be how my lights are. Where it's not one solid piece of light, it's a bunch of LEDs. But for me, it looks pretty well. You can feel that it rounds off like that. Don't go the other way because it's not that sharp because only one side is sharpened. But you can feel that it rolls off rather than before it would kind of go like a yeet. So just make sure it's rounded off. Look for the light for any major imperfections. If there's any that you're worried about that are minor, just do the other side and then come back to it. Doing the other side might grind it down exactly how much you needed it. So now let's go to the other side. This is an incredibly controversial topic. So some people are comfortable with this, so they want to do it the same way on both sides like that. Me, I cannot for the life of me balance this. Do it like I'm not a lefty. If you are, or you're ambidextrous, more power to you. You know that you'll get pretty much the same angle. But for me, that ain't happening. So I took a hint from how you would with a normal stone, okay? And rather than you just flip the blade and then you come into you. So what you have to do is push up, so you raise at the end, and when you come in, it's flat again. Like that. Or if you're lazy, see that? So now it's the same thing. So you're holding this stone the same way that you would the other way. My screen went dark. So you're holding the stone the same way, and I'm going to keep it flat when it's close to me and push away and lift. And then I lift the tail, making sure I continue to lift as I go away. Don't angle it, just lift. And now do the same thing that we just did on that side. So right off the bat, I'm going to make sure you can see here. Right off the bat, you can start to see it convexing. I can still feel that wire a little bit, even though I'm not that concerned about it. I'm more focused on the profile at this point, making sure that both edges, rather than V, are kind of a little bit like that. So that's the side we just did. This is the new side. You can see right there, like on the other side, where it rounds in just a hair. That's not touched. This wasn't touched here. It just requires a lot more work. I've only been going for like 30 seconds. So we continue. rather than 2 fingers, a lot of the time I'll just kind of grab over like this, and that's just saving my fingers. And you know, you can't hold one grip forever. So this is what I'm doing. I'm sure you can see. It's just, you're going to be changing your grip. The only thing that matters is that your fingers are safe and that you're holding it pretty straight and not wobbling. This one, you cannot, you got to be careful of your thumb. So you can't check with your thumb on this side. You got to be very careful when you're facing yourself. This is a sharper knife than when you started. You might see me do this. You might see me do this a little bit here and there. I'll just push away like I'm stropping, and that's cleaning the shmoo off the blade so I can actually see the edge, because there's going to be buildup. You can already see it on my stone here. There's going to be steel dust buildup. So I'm just checking. If it's hard to check, I might not cut into myself, but push away, just get the shmoo off the blade. You can go as fast or slow as you want. At the beginning, you might want to go like very, like when you're first learning, just kind of getting that motion, but I'll go as long as you can keep that wobble. Make sure I'm lifting when I'm away, coming flat when I'm close. What I like about convexing is that it's less muscle memory and more just how your muscles work. I liked that with this. Just, I don't need to like lock in and practice that much. It's just using your own structure here. Still some untouched spots. Here's another thing. If you notice, you're actually right on your edge, there's a bunch of flat spots from the V-edge still. Maybe you're not tilting enough, right? It could be like this, the blade is not flat. But in some instances, like this one was similar, in some instances, you will see that the very edge is not touched, and that might mean that you're not rocking up enough. Like you might only be going that high, and then the blade isn't even, the edge isn't even on the stone yet. So one way to know that is put your blade to the stone flat and then see how tilted it actually has to go for the edge to touch flat, like that. See how heavy that is, how significant of an angle that is. Some of that's because the hollow grind, but if you're not getting the full edge of the knife, you might need to end up tilting a little more at the end there. That's actually pretty good. The one thing I will say is I'm no expert. I just kind of know this system right now. You can see that my bevel on this side, it goes up to there. See that? But on the other side, that was close. On the other side, I didn't, it's not quite as high. It might be hard to show. See that? And what I just need to do is when I go back to this side and lay it flatter when I'm there. I kept lifting up and it's getting less of the edge. And when I'm doing it this way, I'm a little flatter, which is just takes more practice. So I can go back and make it right. So I'll do that now. Try to have less of a significant angle here. I made it pretty similar, not identical yet, but I'm not going to be perfect. That is good. You can still see probably the reflections are a little wavy here. That's kind of just the shape of the blade. That's very difficult because there's a very old knife that I've never used, and it looks like the previous owner may have batoned with this or something, or really chopped at something, or hit a nail. So this blade is not flat, and I hope that's not how it comes from this store. You can see it there. More work. So this side is fairly good, which is what we're going for. And this side is fairly decent. I feel like I might need to do a little more work on the actual round part here. Okay, this is good. It's not perfect, but with reprofiling, we're trying to get both sides convexed. Okay, so what do we do now? Make sure the blade is clean, the edge is clean. Ignore the scrapes, because if this gets used, those are going to happen anyway. And I'm not perfect, and sometimes I go a little too flat, and that scrapes up the side of the knife. See that? So that's what those are coming from. But now we flip it. On your DC4, it's going to be the same thing, I believe, where you're going to start with the coarse and then go to the diamond side. It really depends on what you're going for, I guess. I believe the diamond side on the DC4 is a finer diamond, so diamond can cut pretty much anything, but it wears out. Whereas ceramic can freaking keep on going and never really flatten and never really wear out that much. So we're doing the exact same thing that we just did, and this part actually goes by a little quicker because this is more refinement and polishing. So the exact same thing, pretend we're reprofiling. Exact same thing that we just did, but now on this finer stone. A lot less material. You can start to see that some of it is getting kind of polished there. You see that? And now you can really see if you do have an edge problem, it's going to stick out where, like a sore thumb. But you just keep going, and then the stropping makes it even better, and it might be able to get some of those little nicks out for you, if there are any left. So that's pretty good. I need to do more on this edge here. It also feels like this side is more rounded than this side. This is catching a little more, so we might need to check that at the end before we start stropping. This is kind of more of an advanced technique in a way, but sometimes you know, you're only touching the actual edge when you're lifted, right? So when you're flat, you're really just doing this rounded part, right? So if you know the edge is good, but up here it might not be as shiny, but like a warp in the blade or whatever, you might be able to just go flat and not lift as much, not touch the edge, but really buff that side out if you really want it to be a mirror. So you're still rocking, you're just not going all the way up. It's just, I've done that a little bit. Normally, like, if you just do the whole thing the same way, you'll just keep refining the edge too. But if you just a little spot, like right there, the edge is just fine, but up top it's not as fine, I can just do that and not rock it all the way to the edge. But again, if you do it the full way, you're going to hit both of them anyway, as long as you go pretty flat on the end. So that's not bad. You can, on the CC4, it doesn't get that smooth because you're not doing one motion, you're constantly doing this and changing the angle. So when you're actually using the fine side, let me make sure you're in, you can still see that it's getting it, it's shiny now, but it's not like, it doesn't look like a mirror, it looks like a bunch of little mirrors. And on the CC4 here, that's just what's going to happen until you strop. So just do a final pass here. And now I'm going to go over to the other side. So hopefully it shows up. You can see it's pretty shiny. It's pretty good. I need to do a little more work there. It's a little rough, but you really want it to look similar to this, where it just that the reflection is just, when you actually put it in the light, it's the whole way through. Very shiny. If it's dull, like there's a little duller spot here, you want to keep working on that. So right now I'm not focused as much on like the bead, right, having that bead across the edge, but I'm more worried about like visual inspection, making sure both sides reflect the same, and then when you're done you'll feel for any imperfections and then buff those out as needed. But right now we're just doing this. We're not focused on 5 swipes this way, 5 this way, 1 this way, 1 that way. We're just going off looks. Now, the other side, just flip-flopping as I think we need based on the visual appearance. If you ever see me flip the stone like that, that is sometimes because I see it getting gummed up a little bit, and I just want to distribute the shmoo across this evenly so that it doesn't, you know, I don't have to clean it as much. And you should clean these once in a while, and Fällkniven makes it hard because they use glue that can't get wet. So, and with ceramic, you usually wash it with water, but usually what I'll do is you can take a dry towel to it, or you can take a wet towel and just not soak it, but wipe like this. Okay, and a lot of it does come off when you're actually using it, like this. Oh, wrong side. So that looks pretty good. Let me make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. You see that? How the light reflects across the whole thing. This is pretty good too. So at this point, what are we going to do? It's not, obviously, I could be doing this for another hour and just making sure everything looks beautiful, but don't need that. I'm just trying to make this pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is, you could strop and be happy, but I like to just make double sure. So what I'm going to do is push away from the blade and make sure that nothing tries to bite in to my finger. You see that? I'm just pushing away. Right there, it feels like it's a little rougher there, and on this side it's a lot smoother. So that means I might want to do a little more refining with the finer side of this. You can also feel it in the actual sharpening here. I can feel that it's a little less smooth, and this is fine stone here, so it should feel fine as well. You can tell it's not as loud. So at this point, visually inspect, looks pretty good. Visually inspect, this side also looks pretty good. Not great. You can see it's a little spackled, I guess would be a word. Again, might be my lights. So now this is another part that not a lot of people show. let me pull out a real strop here. That's one, but just when I watched a bunch of videos, they're like this. You're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. Or you might see people like this. And this is sharp blade. Like, just what I do is, I learned this from a weird, obscure video, and I like adapted it, I guess. And I'm sure a bunch of people do it like this. But for a convex edge, you're not going to strop it the same way as you would a V edge, and most people do, that I've seen on the internet. So what I do is I use this stone, either the coarse side up or the smooth side up. It really doesn't matter. It might make more sense logically, but in reality it's not much different to have the coarse side up against this, so it'll grab. But either way, this is pretty smooth, so it doesn't appear to feel much different as with grip. So it doesn't really matter. Pick your favorite. I'm going to do this side up because I want to, and then I just hold it near that edge, not on the edge precisely. You don't want to line it up like that. I like to have this hang off just a little bit so that you're not going to hit here and start wearing down the actual edge of the knife again. And you can see where I hold this because it rubbed all the compound off. Okay, and I'm just going to pancake that together, bloop, and now I'm going to push pretty hard, not like a lot of people are like lightly. Nope, not me. I lay it flat. I push hard, and then I lift right at the end like that. The same that you would when you're sharpening it. And what this does, in my opinion, is it wears it quicker, so you're not just sitting here for 45 minutes, just barely doing anything. And it also polishes and refines the entire edge. So the difference here than a stone now, here's the major difference. I don't just lift up here. What I do here is I'll go like this, and this is where you actually rotate. See that? This is different than a stone because what you want is the entire blade to not be cutting into the leather, but just rubbing across. And if you do it like this, it'll start digging into the leather. See that? So that's why you actually have to rotate and just apply pressure like this. Got it? You can see I actually do the entire tip there, like that. You're not trying to wear it out, you're trying to just follow the same angle that the convex is. See that? And now you can see that it's almost done on this side. See how mirror-like that is? Pretty mirror-like, right? Except for right there, I gotta keep working. You obviously, I'm not utilizing this part because there's no barrier behind it. See that? It's just, you kind of need to know the length of the stone and keep rubbing that. And if you hold it the same way, you'll see the stone like shaped into the actual leather here. This is not any fancy compound either. I think it's Sharpall or something, just whatever was on Amazon that was green and said compound after that. I know some people say use the Bark River stuff, and I'm pretty sure that's incredible stuff. Or there's these diamond, I have some over here, there's this diamond spray or paste you can get. I really like just kind of going minimal, and you got the green crap on here and it appears to polish the blade. So almost done, like really almost done. There's just a tiny bit that's not a mirror, but like a little hazy mirror. So I'm going to keep at it, really applying some pressure here. And now That's pretty good. I'm going to say that's good. And let me see if it shows up here. Yeah, you can see that that is a mirrored edge. See that? It's so small. I didn't make, like, I could have made that bevel a little bigger and you can see me in it. But that is, you can see how my lights look there. I believe. It doesn't appear to be focusing very well, but that's a mirrored edge. Okay? So now let's make this side mirrored. It's the same thing. Hold it like this, just the thumb at the bottom. Push away from you. Push away from you. Push away from you, and lift at the very end. Here you can kind of get a little fancy, and you don't have to use the full thing like this if you don't have the arm length, just as long as you're following that same lift. See that? So it's pretty good. There's some minor spots that I want to keep polishing. It didn't look like I got all the way on the edge there yet. So keep going until it's shiny. And you'll know if you're not getting the right angle here because the edge, you know, you're going to see that part of it's shiny, not the whole edge. And that's what I appeared to do right here. And one thing you might have noticed is we have not tested the sharpness of the blade yet. I usually do it that way because if it looks sharp, it usually is, unless you really go to a crazy angle like that, then you're going to round it and that'll be pretty obvious. But I say that this is pretty good. Obviously not perfect in many ways, but neither am I. So there's some more refinement that could be done here. It's on this side, pushing away. You can tell how hard I'm really pushing. And when I go light, I don't see many, if any, results. And if I do, it takes a very long time. And I'm convexing as I'm stropping. So you actually strop the entire edge of the knife. So I would say that's pretty good. Now, some people check for sharpness this way. I'll do their way, which is just that. And this is a freaking sharp knife. You're not rubbing your fingers, you're just kind of clamshelling it like this and pushing back, and you can feel it bite. So let's just see if it shaves any arm hair. It's safe to say it does. I'm gonna have to cover that bad boy up. So that's how it's done. And I mean, I've been doing this for an hour, and I've been explaining myself and stopping and talking, and we didn't need a table. We didn't need anything. In fact, having this table made it harder because I'm like extending my arms all the way out. Yeah, I'm just trying to strop that hair off. Poor knife. So there you are. It's good to go now. Like if you wanted to use this camping or everyday carry, you have an incredibly sharp knife, and the convex edge is going to be a little stronger than your V edge in most cases, especially like bang 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 cases. You will notice just slightly that you're not going to have to actually take it to the stone that much, and if you do, it's generally going to be this one. There's not going to be as many chips in your normal blade. Obviously, if you have an incredibly not tough blade that holds an edge very well, like S110V, it might chip a little more. But I like the convex just because it does maintain this shape a little better than the V, and because I can actually convex a knife and I cannot currently V-edge a knife very well. So that's how it's done. And I want to just get some good angle here. You can see that it's actually mirrored. So this is a secondary convex on a hollow grind, which not necessarily the best setup ever, but I like sharpening my knives, and I currently can convex a lot better than any other setup. So I put a convex on it, and that should hopefully help this maintain its sharpness and use very well. I don't have any paper here. Nope. I do have some plastic. I don't know how much that really shows anything, but I'll try. I mean, it did this to my freaking arm in like a few passes, so. Yeah, it's safe to say that's really friggin' sharp. So that's how it's done on a $25 stone at full price, unless they changed it. So medium, fine, they might have different, and then strop. And then my green compound is just this stuff off of Amazon, which is I can try to find it, but just any chromium oxide green compound, or any green compound you can get will be fine. I heated this up with a hot air gun, whatever, or a hair dryer, and then you just paint it on. When you heat it up, it absorbs into the leather really well. It helps it stay and actually sit in there. And that's it. And then I can take this wherever I go. If I'm going out camping or whatever, I don't need to bring a bunch of stones, and also that are precious and expensive. And you can get an edge like this, whereas a lot of people have multiple strops and multiple stones. To get something similar to this, maybe a little better, maybe a little more refined, maybe less scratches, because there's, you have a setup. But this is how that's done on the Fällkniven CC4 or DC4. I really like their products, and I would recommend it. Again, just you don't need a table. You can just use your hands, and you can get a knife like this. I'm gonna go wash my hands.